We are Mason and Amber Perkins. We've been married for 15 years and we've been going to Hope for 5. We have 2 kids, a 3-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. Hope announced a foster care meeting and I knew immediately that we were supposed to go. And by the time I got to the meeting, I was in tears for the entire meeting. And I knew that we just needed to know what the next step was. And because the Lord had prepared us for that opportunity to say, yes, we're going to go to this meeting. And then, yes, we're going to make that first phone call. Yes, we're going to go to the training. Yes, we're going to buy a new car. And it continued that way, just one step after another.
I had just picked up our kids from school and daycare. So I get in the car, drive the kids home, and I turn around and talk to them and say, hey kids, you know that we've been getting ready for other kids to come live in our home who need a home. Well, we have 2 kids coming to our house tonight.
I remember that night, we were in tears, just crying for the kids that had just come into our care, crying for our kids, crying for ourselves, and crying for these kiddos' parents that were missing them. And I think we cried for a couple days, just, trusting that the Lord had called us into it, but also wondering what in the world had we said yes to. Something that we kept coming back to, Pastor Diego said one Sunday, that God's logic is Jesus. And that rang in my ear for so long, because when we would have difficult moments where our kids were experiencing difficulties, I would go to the Lord and how do we ask them to do this? How do I let my son experience this? And the Lord would come back with, his answer was Jesus.
They were in our house roughly a year, pretty much a year. And reconciliation, them going home, was the goal the whole time, because reconciled families is better. So as we were getting closer to that, that you still have these thoughts of when is the right time for them to go home. So I remember a time when I went to pick up the kids from their biological family's house to bring them back to our house. That he was in a good mood. He was just shouting and just yelling and stuff. I couldn't understand what he was saying, but what I could make out was ... And it wasn't until later that we were back at our house and he was playing with our daughter, Rose, and they were both shouting. And I heard the ... so I listened and I could actually make out what they were saying. It was, the Lord your God goes with you. And at that moment I could tell, it was clear to me that God was saying, they're going home and I'm going with them.
I think you go into it thinking you're going to be the one ministering and changing lives, but the reality is that it changes your life and it changes your heart and your perspective, and we'll never be the same.